Marketplace is supported by Putnam Investments, recognizing the value of financial advice since 1937. Putnam Investments, a world of investing. Produced in association with the University of Southern California.
There's a saying that if you could sell one of anything to the 1.3 billion people in China, you'd be doing pretty well for yourself, wouldn't you? That statistic is the nub of today's news that China is now the world's second largest economy. Per capita GDP on the broadcast today from American Public Media. This is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Gather.com, the social network where people can make new friends who share their interests. People talking about today's news at news.gather.com. And by Progressive Insurance, helping people shop for car insurance at 1-800-PROGRESSIVE and Progressive.com.
From the Frank Stanton Studios in Los Angeles, I'm Kai Ryssdal. Good to have you with us on a Monday, everybody. This one is the 16th of August. It might help to think of a given country's gross domestic product, that is, the size of its economy, as a giant pile of everything it produces, all the widgets and widget repair services and widget shipping companies that it has. Today, the Chinese pile officially took over second place. A report of slower than expected growth in the Japanese economy dropped Tokyo down to third. The American pile, in case you're curious, 2 to 3 times bigger than China's, depending on how you measure it. From Washington, Marketplace's Scott Tong reports.
A soulless economist could quibble with the GDP numbers. They're not adjusted for purchasing power or seasons. But make no mistake, China is springing forward at a 9% clip. Japan, 0.4. China's transformation began 3 decades ago. Clayton Dubey at the University of Southern California remembers the early 80s. He married a Chinese national, and at the time,
the standard list of items that you would prepare for your bride would be 3 things that go around: a watch, a bicycle, and a sewing machine.
3 valuable things back then. Today, they're everywhere, thanks in large part to growth from foreign investment, says former IMF economist Desmond Lockman. As for Japan, he says its economy has fallen behind China for good.
Its population is aging. You've got birth rate very low. It means fewer workers relative to their aging population.
The World Bank thinks China will slow down a bit, but even so, it may grow at a 6 to 8% rate for years, which would help all its people. Divided by population, income per capita remains a fraction of that in America. Going forward, Chip Chaikin at the private equity firm Blue Point Capital Partners is optimistic. He's betting on Chinese shoppers.
Maybe it's because we've all just recently given up hope on the U.S. consumer, but I think there is a lot of optimism in the Chinese consumer. And part of it really is the flip side of what you see in the U.S., where our consumer over-levered. China really is still very much the opposite.
They're just starting to borrow. And if you believe some of the prognosticators, they could pass the U.S. in total output in 10 years. In Washington, I'm Scott Tong for Marketplace.
Speaking about borrowing, you have heard or seen stories about borrowing costs all over the place the past couple of months. I know you have here. That with interest rates at all-time lows, this is a great time to get a loan. We were talking about homeowners and mortgages on the broadcast the other day. Now, though, it's companies. Corporations that are borrowing money for short periods in what's called the commercial paper market are paying less than 1/3 of 1% interest. Less than 1/3 of 1%. It's a huge change from the fall of 2008 and the heart of the financial crisis when commercial paper basically dried up. Marketplace's Elisa Roth reports now from New York.
Companies use these short-term loans for daily needs, things like paying workers or vendors. The loans can be as short as a day or as long as 9 months, but either way, they're considered very safe, partly because only companies with very high credit ratings can borrow this way. Corporations like Google and Merck have been taking out lots of them lately. David Sharfstein's a finance professor at Harvard Business